Great. Thank you so much for joining us. We are so excited for this next panel. One of the most important topics that have come up in our discussions, especially in the networking sessions, this topic of holistic wellness for aquatic athletes. This session will be in English, so to listen to it in Spanish, please click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. El día de hoy vamos a estar hablando de todo lo que es el bienestar holístico para los atletas acuáticos. Esta sesión es en inglés, así que por favor, si la quiere escuchar en español, por favor oprima el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Okay, and with that, we are ready to get going. It is my absolute honor to introduce this incredible panel that we have lined up today, and I am so happy to have such incredible individuals in our aquatic community just, pushing forward this idea of holistic wellness for aquatic athletes and this multi-dimensional approach to how we understand wellness. So I am extremely happy to welcome our first speaker, Dallas Ludwick, who has 25 years of experience in building positive team cultures and coaching athletes in diving. She has helped athletes achieve international success at the PanAm Games, Commonwealth Games, and PHYSIO World University Games. Recognized as Team Awesome by Diving Canada in 2020 for her club's creativity during the pandemic, Dallas now coaches internationally in high diving for World Aquatics and Red Bull cliff diving. She is passionate about the sport's evolution and its demands on athlete performance and recovery. So without further ado, Dallas, the screen is all yours.
Awesome. I'll just share my screen here. Okay. Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you all for coming. I have to say, I'm not sure that everyone is super pumped about this topic anymore. I know that mental health and wellness is one of the most biggest used words of 2024, but I'm glad that you came because we're going to talk about how to relate this to performing better as an athlete, to performing better at work, and generally to living well. So we're going to look at how we can take care of ourselves in a high performance world, how we can be stronger as a team by facing the topic head on, and how we can create space for tough conversations. Essentially, we're looking at how we can value both the human and the performance at the same time. So we have only 15 minutes, and we're going to try to look at a lot of things from is it okay to not be okay, through different strategies to holding space for those tough conversations. So here we go. Is it okay to not be okay? Is it? Do you agree? And if you do, then what do you actually do with that? So these days, people are they're talking more choice. They're picking where they want to go, where they want to stay. People want to be in places where they feel valued, seen, and understood. And in the workplace, we know that a person's mental health affects their job satisfaction, their productivity, creativity, and communication. And we know that it's directly related to absenteeism and retention. And we know that it's all the same in sports too. After all, sports is supposed to be enjoyable, and it's supposed to build people up as humans. So it's okay to not be okay. Most people aren't really sure how to action that concept. What do you do next? What do you do when you're under a deadline? What do you do when you've got to compete or produce something right now, regardless of how you're feeling? So we're going to look for strategies that find ways to value both the human and the performance. And one place I'd like to see the mental health conversation get to is how can we recover and take care of ourselves without giving up the responsibilities in our life? So let's take a step back and let's look at what we bring to the table with us. So we all bring our history to the pool, to the workplace. We might have heard messaging that makes it hard for us to talk about mental health. And we don't see or know what the starting point is for everyone else in the room. And even with ourselves, we often don't even think of this. We don't think about how our past and the messages that we've heard influence how we respond to the topic. And it does affect how we respond to others and our own struggles as well. So what now? In recent years, with this it's okay to be okay movement, many have started observing their own mental health for the first time. And some have made it to accepting their fluctuating states with less judgment. But now there's a push to be able to talk about it, which is very difficult for many. And in the consulting work that I do for business environments and for professional sport environments, we've been reflecting a lot on how to bridge the gap between observing and accepting our mental health and how to communicate about what's going on and what to actually do about it. So in essence, we want to become more proactive so that we can be on our game when we need to be, and especially as coaches and leaders, how we can help others to do the same. So I think one of the main reasons that people shy away from the mental health conversation is because it feels unpredictable. And as high achieving people, we like to follow nice, clean cut recipes to success, and we find it hard to go there. So we're going to look at mental health from two categories, predictable and unpredictable. And let's make a point to notice more about what's predictable and take back ownership and control so that we can have better consistency. Because the more we find predictable, the more agency we have over how we feel more often, and also the more agency we feel over how we live despite what's going on the inside or when it's not going to plan. So likewise, if we can come up with strategies to use in the moment when things arrived that we weren't expecting, then we can deal better with the unpredictable. So even if a situation is unpredictable, we can train ourselves to be more predictable in our response. And many of us have been brought up to judge and ignore certain parts of ourselves than others. But today we're going to look at how preparing for fluctuations in mental health benefits everyone. And my goal is for this to be really practical. So let's jump into it. First, we're going to look at the predictable stuff around you and about you. So around you, you can always expect certain fluctuations in patterns throughout the day, the week, and we can certainly expect fluctuations throughout the year or the season. We know that there's events coming up. We know when too much is coming up. We know roughly what to expect and when it will get hard and really challenge us. The question is, are we working in downtime? Are we working in those lower intensity moments or periods in the day, rest before and after big pushes, or is it unrelenting? We can't lower the intensity during those necessary stressful times, but what can we do? And this applies equally in the workplace as it does to athletes in their training. So look at the calendar year as a whole. What are the big push times? How can you ensure that the team tank is full before going into a big push? And what type of recovery can you build in after a big push? You know, I would love to know what Maureen and Valerie have planned for next week after this huge, huge endeavor. You know, I can't imagine the energy consumption that this has taken. And as a leader, you need to ask yourself, you know, are there things that can be moved to a better time? And does everyone on your team have the same fluctuations or do they differ? Do you work in debrief, discussion, recovery, or is it always straight on to the next task, one after another? And you need to ask, what are the parameters for allowing time off for recovery? Do you know the other responsibilities and life loads that your team have in their lives? And do you understand the individual differences in the ways in which team members respond to stress? And then as an individual, do the big pushes in your personal life coincide with the big pushes at work or sport? And are there ways to distribute things or not? And how can you prioritize your wellness during different times of the year? So we all have our individual internal panels patterns as well. So about us, one of the ways we try to make the topic of mental health more comfortable is to draw parallels between our mental health and our physical health. So as humans, we expect that we'll have physical injuries and sickness at points in our lives. Why wouldn't we expect the same from our mental health? You know, most humans are willing to talk about and address their physical challenges openly. And as a coach, I talk about this with my athletes all the time. You know, oh, so you've got an injury. You need rest. You need treatment. We need some lower intensity, then eventually get back to it. No problem. Oh, you're feeling awesome. Great. Let's go get it. Or you're physically exhausted from doing all that 10-meter last week. Your legs are super sore from the huge training load at weights. How's that going to impact today? Or you've had the flu all weekend. You're feeling a bit better, but you're still a bit tired and a little weak. Okay, sounds like we need to do something light today. I think most people are very comfortable talking about physical injuries and illnesses. And in sport, we talk openly about physical pain and we carefully address and manage the physical issues. Meanwhile, the mental and emotional pain are often neglected or even hushed. So we've built a model that uses familiar language that we think makes it easier to talk about. So here we intentionally use the same words we use for physical wellness. Are you injured, hurt, or healthy? So look here at the types of signs being used in the different zones. In looking at the injured zone, what comes up for you? Think of yourself honestly. What are your first signs that you're slipping from healthy to hurt? What are your personal telltale signs that you are injured? And there's nothing wrong with having lows. That's how we know joy. We put this on a spectrum of all the colors because if we're going to do really difficult things and we're going to strive for really extreme performances and outcomes, we're going to be feeling it all. And I like to call that full color living. And who wants to live a muted life anyway? Probably none of the people that are on this call. We're all here to strive for awesomeness. So the issue really is just getting stuck somewhere and not recognizing it and not being able to take steps to heal and get back to healthy. And then alternatively, if we pretend that we're only ever healthy, we aren't being honest with ourselves either. And that's exhausting. So I'm going to ask you just to reflect on what experiences you've had in the last year. What states have you been in? And be honest with yourself. Because often we attribute dips in our mental health to too much stress or too much overall life load. But let's not forget the physical body. It's pretty predictable too. So we can expect certain physical responses to stress, and you're pretty familiar with these: the sweaty palms, the heart pounding, cold fingertips, tight shoulders, or your legs are stiffening up, trouble breathing. But there's other ones that you might not be as conscious of. For example, the visual ocular system. It reacts too. Your pupils constrict. And unlike I know Dr. G, who's coming up, who's super techy, I'm very low tech. So this is my technology here. We know it as tunnel vision. So next time you have an extra one of these in the bathroom, I need to make sure the screen can see it, save it until you have two. And this is your tunnel vision. It feels like this. So you can practice this. This is me under stress. And depending on your type of work or your sport, there might be times when this narrowing is actually helpful to a point. But generally, and especially if you're working with other people, you're missing a lot of information when you're here, when you're in this state. And we all have our individual things because, we're all individuals, but these things are universal. They're biological. They're predictable. So a big competition or a big deadline's coming up. There's just too much on your plate. You can feel the stress building, physically, emotionally. What can you do? So as an individual, you can look at yourself honestly. What are your tendencies? What are your triggers for stress or emotional states that aren't helpful? What's the first signs that you have that you can look at yourself? Physical, mood, behavior. And when was the last time you asked yourself any of these questions? So the key is much of it becomes predictable if we pay attention to ourselves and our reactions. And we can identify when the times that are difficult are coming and create a plan to be more proactive. What strategies work for you to relax and de-stress? When can you schedule in times to fill your own tank? And do you deliberately create plans to curate how you want to feel more often? So let's quickly look at each one of those. So anti-stress actions, when you notice you're looking through the toilet paper rolls, do these things. Ideally, you would want these things worked in before you get to the toilet paper roll vision, but hey, we all slip. So work them in when you notice. And what fills your tank? The more you do these things, the more proactive you're being. We all have our things that add to our lives that give us energy. And when we do them, we're basically acknowledging our predictable patterns and working them in. We can also curate our mood to a certain degree. We can create deliberate plans that dictate how we feel, and we can do it more often. So look back on the year. What were you intentional about? 2025 is coming soon. You can decide now which feeling or emotion you want to experience more of and create opportunities for yourself to feel it. So don't wait to see what happens. You can make a plan. So back to mental health. What can you do when you are injured to help you move towards healthy? What do you notice about yourself and your behaviors when you're hurt? And who or what keeps you healthy? So the reason I shared our mental health continuum is because when everyone has a shared language, it's easier to communicate. And we can think about these types of questions as a group or as a coach and an athlete. What do you need your teammates and your coworkers to know about you when you're stressed? How can you prepare for the predictable, stressful times? And what can we build in as a team? What can we build in as an organization overall? One of my favorite conversations I love to have with my divers, I call it what I bring, what I need, because everyone will do things that they think are helpful in times of stress, but everyone needs and wants different things. And it's best to know up front who can be helpful to who. And also, many situations come up where someone means well and is trying to help, but might be doing exactly the opposite of someone else that someone else really needs in that moment. So now that we've taken an honest look at just how much is actually pretty predictable about ourselves and our situations, let's get on to what's actually unpredictable. And the reality is unexpected things happen all the time, especially in sport. And now that I'm in high diving, I have never seen more unexpected elements on any given day in sport before. Being ready for anything might possibly be the biggest skill required for this extreme sport. But from a mental health perspective, or as a leader, as a coach, unexpected conversations happen too. And a lot has happened in recent years. People are feeling like they can and they should be talking about their mental health more. And someone as a coach or a leader might come to you with something you weren't expecting them to say and you weren't ready for it. And you're rattled. And I think this is what a lot of leaders fear. They just don't know what to do. Now what? So, thinking back to those initial messages that have shaped us and our view of mental health, it's important to note that how you react in that moment is a function of your history and your inner dialogue. And here's one scenario. And now the person feels unvalued. And what's important to remember is how you handle that conversation is going to have a massive effect on your relationship with that person. And it may determine if you ever get the privilege of hearing their truth again. And here's the thing. You're both stressed. So physiologically, you probably both look like this in that conversation. The person telling their truth might be very, very stressed in doing so. And the person hearing it might be very, very caught off guard and stressed about not knowing what to say or do. So you're both in the same place, trying not to screw it up. So how do you value the person when you've been caught off guard and when you're trying to get results? I think this is what everyone's trying to figure out right now, how we value both the person and the performance and what needs to get done. And a lot of it is just how you show up. So when things get tough, who are you? I'm sure we can all think of the person in our federation who is speedily pacing up and down the pool deck, sweating, barking out orders at others, interfering. Their stress is so obvious and it's not helpful. Likewise, I'm sure you can all think of the person in your federation who gets quiet, maybe even disappears from pool deck, hands over all responsibility for everything, and it's also not helpful. So the point here is even in an unpredictable situation, your response is probably pretty predictable. So pay attention to yourself or ask others because it's probably pretty obvious to them. And then the question is, where do you want to be? What would be more helpful to others and more productive overall? And this situation might be unpredictable. It might have caught you off guard, but your reaction is probably pretty predictable. And that might be a good thing or it might be not a good thing. So how can you pause and try to have a more predictable response that's beneficial? How can you work on this? As high performers, we all know that talking about being in a stressful moment and preparing in advance will never really replicate actually being in the moment. So the next time you're in a stressful moment, just try the ABCs. First, just notice, be aware of where you're at. Second, breathe. Take a pause to name it. What is your internal reaction? And then third, choose. How do I want to respond that is going to help rather than hinder this relationship or this situation? And what you need to remember is how you handle it is going to determine if you get the truth again in the future. And you can't forget that honesty is a gift. You might be uncomfortable with what you're hearing, but honesty is a gift, and it's a gift that they're willing to put that conversation on the table. So if leaders can become, just even through the ABCs, more stable and more predictable, they become more of a safe space, and they're going to get the truth more often. And when you really, really just don't know what to say or do, listening is the main solution. When you're just totally caught off guard, don't jump to conclusions, don't jump to solutions. Number one, manage yourself by pausing and being intentional about your outward reaction. And number two, really listen. Find out what they want to share and what they need. There's no such thing as just listening. Truly listening is actually a very, very powerful skill. So, in conclusion, often mental health is seen as very unpredictable, when in fact, if we're honest with ourselves, there's a lot that's quite predictable about us. And we sometimes have more agency over our mental health than we realize. And if we're diligent, we can increase our own resilience and build a culture that fosters more resilience. And it doesn't mean that when you fall off track that you're weak or irresponsible. We all slip. It means that when you slip, you hopefully have more tools in your toolbox to recover and start moving back towards healthy. And this applies both as an individual and as a team. So the more we have conversations about it, and the more predictable it becomes, the less the unpredictable moments can throw us off track. And the more stable and predictable we are as leaders, the more people will come to us with the stuff that really matters. And the more we're willing to deal with the whole person, the more we can tackle and get through in a high performance way. So we have a podcast on this topic with lots of great guests. And we asked when all of our podcast guests this question, when do you see mental health? They had all kinds of answers. But I personally really like this one. Don't assume that you can see it. And this is why listening is such a big skill. And this is why having a common language is so critical. And this is why having a predictable response is so beneficial. And a reminder to all the sport leaders and coaches and the athletes who will take on leadership roles in the future, this stuff is only going to get more and more important. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Dallas. This was amazing. And I'll have to reach out to get, all the resources. I'm sure everyone would appreciate, those models for communication, which are so important. So thank you so much. With that, I would like to introduce our next speaker. Erica Beine is a former NCAA All-American athlete and a trailblazer in Division I coaching with over 13 years of experience. As a certified sports nutritionist and health coach, she specializes in personalized nutrition, developing tailored plans based on athletes' genetics to optimize performance, recovery, and supplementation. Erica has worked with Olympic gold medalists, showcasing the impact of individualized nutrition. She is the owner and president of Beine Wellness Building and holds a master's in athletic administration and a degree in business and coaching. And it is my absolute honor to welcome Erica, whose company, Beine Wellness Building, is a new partner for PanAm Aquatics as well. So we're incredibly happy for athletes, coaches, and everyone else in the community to have access to such an amazing team who are just putting athletes first. So thank you so much, Erica. The screen is all yours.
Thank you, Valerie. And Dallas, that was so good. As a former coach, like I wish that would have been around in my 13 years of coaching. That was so good. Like every coach out there needs you for their team. Like that was incredible. I even just learned some things for myself, which was so fantastic. I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully that pops up for you guys. And sometimes it takes a hot second. There we go. So as Valerie said, we're going to talk about the importance of nutrition and especially individualized nutrition in aquatic athletes. If you were on our partner talk last night, I went into a little bit in depth on this, but not quite too involved because I wanted to get a little bit more into it here. We could spend hours, talking about the different ways of nutrition is going to play a role in an athlete or a coach or just an individual's life, right? It's going to affect their mental health, as what Dallas was talking about. We eat good, we feel good, right? And that cycle just keeps going. It's such an important factor when it comes to an athlete's health and their overall being. If they're eating well, if they're sleeping well, if they're hydrating well, they're at least hitting the basic three components. Now, when they come to us, they maybe hit one of those, right? And so, as Valerie said, we worked with some very high profile swimming athletes and other athletes as well, not necessarily swimmers. And some of them come to us because they just want refinement. An Olympic gold medalist has figured things out somewhat. And our job is to help them even refine and tweak further, right? So there we're not rebuilding the whole ship, we're just kind of fine-tuning it. A lot of people that come to us of all different ages, whether they're a master swimmer, an age group swimmer, a college swimmer, right? We have to kind of really train them how to think about what goes in their body. And what we think we do a really good job of is making sure we do that in a very practical, easy, affordable way that they can put that stuff, the good stuff, in their body and feel good. So the base place that we start is with genetics. So we're teaching athletes how to eat, supplement, recover, all based on their genetics. And I'll show you just a little sneak preview of what a genetics report looks like and how we actually use that. But our big concept is food is fuel. Literally every team workshop I do when we're talking to teams and young athletes, high school age athletes, college athletes, is we're talking about fuel in your gas tank. If your car's gas tank looks like this, you're not going anywhere very quickly. So if you're a coach on this call and you're thinking, yes, my athletes show up to practice in the afternoon and haven't eaten anything since lunch. That's a long time. Their gas tank looks like this. Or my athletes come to morning practice and don't eat anything since dinner. Their gas tank's going to look like this. And we all know that they're not going to perform their best. The same as a coach. If you wake up in the morning and don't eat anything before you go to morning practice, your gas tank looks like this. And then you're somebody Dallas described, walking up and down the pool deck, shouting out orders, not being very, great with your athletes, right? You have to be fueled as a coach as well. So when I talk to kids, I say, you do not want your gas tank to look like this. Even after practice, our goal is to maybe be like half to three-quarters depleted. We never want to be down here. Because if you go to the gas station to fill up your car when it's at this level, which I am super great at doing that and waiting until my car looks like that, it takes a long time at the pump to fill up your car, right? And think about that with the body too. It takes a long time to get that body back to where we can actually do what we are asking out of it again and not be nervous we're going to run out of fuel. So what we do is how we kind of go about this is we make a plan. We test the body, we gather data, and we put data into action. So as an athlete, the body needs proper amounts of calories, proteins, right, to train, recover, perform, heal from injuries, maintain and build strength. Everybody has different goals. Every single athlete I meet with has a different goal of why they're working with us. So we don't take everybody and throw them into a one category. Everyone needs to do this. We need to listen and learn about their unique struggles. And we need to help them based on those unique struggles and get real data of why this is happening. And kids today are so, so smart. They can get access to anything at any time, right? I did not have that. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. We had to go to a library and learn things, right? Now you can ask Google, and they are so smart and so savvy with how to find information, sometimes too much information or the wrong information. But when they see data, that helps them click up here to what's going on with the rest of their body. And non-athletes and athletes in different sports have different fueling needs, right? A diver, a high diver, a cliff diver, a swimmer, an open water swimmer, completely different fueling needs. So why are we going to treat them all the same? When I was a college coach, we had sports nutritionists, dietitians on our campus. And not that they were doing anything wrong, but every sport kind of got the same talk. Whether you were football, whether you were basketball, whether you were swimming, right? Everybody was sort of treated the same when it came to nutrition. And that kind of, broad scope worked for some, didn't work for others, right? So they are frustrated and they don't know what's going on. They feel like they're doing everything right, and it's just not working for their body. So knowing your body's unique individual needs It's really important to know how to treat your body and what you need to eat, what you need to supplement with, how you fuel differently than, your male teammate that might be on the men's team, right, that you train with. You are two totally different people. So what they eat and you eat should be completely different sometimes, not always. There might be similar paths, but we do need to make sure you're getting different things based on what you need. So testing the genes, like I mentioned, we test to get data to build the plan instead of here's what your plate should look like, right? That works for a lot of people and it's really good for little kids, right? Teaching them the basics very young, that's fantastic. But this is taking it to another level. And so we're able to test different genes. If you really want to fall asleep tonight, please download this and start reading through it. You will fall asleep so quickly, most likely, because it's not super exciting information. So I'm not going to read through it. But how we then gather that data, the data when they take a genetic swab, it's through a cheek swab. A lab processes that for us, and then a generated lab report comes out based on the results of the genes. So we can see super interesting connections on 3 different sections of the body: a food-related section, a vitamin-related section, and a physical section. So we're learning lots of different pieces, not only about nutrition, but how their body's methylating and processing vitamins. So if their body can't process synthetic vitamins well, they probably shouldn't use synthetic vitamins because it's actually working against them. So we're teaching them what to look for in products, what to look for on nutrition labels that are good, and ones we, probably want to avoid when possible. And I say when possible because many athletes don't have control over what they're eating at some point in their swimming, diving, water polo career, right? Because they're on a team travel trip and they're just fed food. And so we have to just do the best we can when we have control over that and still maybe bring along extra things that we can eat that we feel good about in case what is offered isn't our favorite or we know is going to upset our digestive system. A lot of people are actually lactose intolerant and have zero idea that they are. I had 2 people on Friday I was meeting with, and they had no idea that they were lactose intolerant because it doesn't show up in the traditional way of digestive troubles. Sometimes it's showing up as acne. One child was dealing with a lot of acne issues. It's showing up as fatigue, right? It's showing up in different ways. So those are just 2 very great examples of 38 different genes that we're testing. And a report comes back on about 40 different pages. So there's a little bit more applicable data and information on that. From there, that's where we help the athlete go, okay, you're lactose intolerant. How are we going to deal with that, right? What does that mean? We don't want to reduce some of those really important nutrients that you can get from dairy, like calcium and vitamin D. So how do we appropriately transition that and switch some things based on what your budget is, what you have access to, right? Some people I was working with someone in the Philippines last week, and they give a lot of coconut access. So lots of coconut products were great for them versus dairy products. So we told them to switch over to coconut-based things instead of the dairy-based products. So we can help them. We create an action plan, something that looks like this, but it would have many more pages. These are just 2 easy examples. And data is great. When you're able to test and figure out somebody has, and I'm going to throw a very unknown word out there, but the MTHFR genetic mutation, that's very, very, very life impacting. Okay, if anyone knows what that means, bravo, that's awesome. But that's that we see connections to depression, mental health, fatigue, cramping, right? You would never probably know that you have that unless your parents were dealt with infertility issues because it's connected into the fertility world, or for some reason you saw a holistic practitioner and they did some genetic testing with you. But if you have the MTHFR gene mutation, if I gave that to Valerie and said, you have this, she'd go, okay, but what does that mean? And she's going to ask Dr. Google and find a lot of things that Dr. Google probably is incorrect about. So our job is to help them take that data and put that into action in realistic ways. So we're learning about that. One of the really unique things that we're seeing in the aquatic space with athletes, and much of our work is with swimmers, but this is also going to relate to diving, to anybody in chlorine issues, even coaches that are having thyroid problems. And you're probably thinking, why is that related? If there's one thing, if you are a coach or in charge of a federation, if there's one thing you can watch your aquatic athletes on, is thyroid numbers. So in the States, before COVID happened, USA Swimming used to do a lot of blood testing with the national team, and they could get that done multiple times a year if they desired. I think that's kind of been put on pause through COVID and beyond. But watching the thyroid numbers is so important, and I will show you why. Because your body, if you are in chlorine, exposed to chlorine, even as a coach on the deck, you're exposed and breathing that in, unless you're at an outdoor pool, which is amazing. That's fantastic. But athletes in chlorine are absorbing that through their skin. And the thyroid, which is right here, right? And that regulates our hormones, right? Regulates so many things in our body. If that is off, our whole system is off. The thyroid thinks chlorine is a very important nutrient called iodine. Okay, our body needs iodine. If you look at your multivitamins, some of your other vitamins you may take, your salt, it may have iodine in it. And that is to help support not only other things, but your thyroid. It's a very important nutrient. Now, the body thinks that chlorine is iodine since they come from the same group. Okay, so it brings that in and it thinks it tries to use it as iodine and it screws up the thyroid. The amount of current swimmers and aquatic athletes that we see currently with hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's disease or former ones. Sometimes it doesn't show up because they haven't had this tested. And then 10 years later, they really struggle with the symptoms, which I'll show you next. And that thyroid has been a problem for quite some time. Or if someone becomes pregnant, right? We have a former, let's say, swimmer, and they never had any issues, and then through an event like pregnancy, that can just really exacerbate thyroid issues. And now that didn't come out of nowhere. That probably started back in their swimming days, for example. So athletes and coaches are exposed to this stuff daily. Right? Swimmers and divers and water polo players more because they're actually immersed in it, but coaches are breathing that in. And I've never been on a pool deck that I think had great air quality ever in my life, unless it was outdoors. So that, you're breathing that back in. How do you test that and what do you want to look for? This is something we do here in the States, but you can also do it at any lab as long as you know what you're looking for. And you're looking for, a full thyroid panel, and you're looking for certain numbers that could potentially be out of range. Okay. And even what we see, even if they're not out of range, but they're a little above the optimal range, they're still symptomatic. And they're still having troubles with the symptoms of low thyroid activity. And here's what that kind of looks like. I'm a former swimmer. I think I had all of these almost at one point in my life. Cold intolerance, especially depression, unexplained weight gain. That is a common one I see in females. Okay, college females especially, because all of a sudden their body is changing and they are gaining weight and they cut their calories back and they're working with a nutritionist on campus and nothing is working. So my first thought is always, let's go to your thyroid and let's see what's happening there. Migraines outside of menstrual cycles, if we're talking about women, but migraines are very connected, just super fatigued, right? Just no get up and go. The battery is low and beyond what you think it should be normal as an athlete training at that level. Women can really experience a lot of menstrual cycle issues, right? Missing them. painful, just we've all seen those athletes where they just, at that time of month, they are almost just useless at training. They can't do anything. They're in so much pain. That's not good. That's not healthy. Is it normal potentially? Yes. But is that okay? No. The normal isn't always okay. Something is going on. So if any of those resonate with you and thinking about certain athletes that you have or currently, or maybe had before, that might be something that is going on. So send them to somebody that can get some help. Send them to somebody that's going to be able to look and understand that they're an athlete. So their numbers and results need to look a little different than the average person, than what we want to see them for an athlete's results. The other unique concern that we see in aquatic athletes is gut health issues. A lot of, especially swimmers, divers, track and field athletes, right? They're not in the aquatic space, but also a very similar type of effort on the body as swimming recommends or suggests. And what we're seeing is a lot of swimmers and anyone with that high intensity training is having gut issues because 1 hour more of intense training, which if you're thinking about the swimming space, every workout is more than an hour pretty much. It's putting the body, and Dallas mentioned this too, fight or flight, right? Not rest and digest. And especially just talking about swimmers, if we go to 6 to 8 a.m. workout, and then we have a little bit of time off and do other things that might cause stress. And then we go to 4 to 6 p.m. workout. And then we do some other stuff that might cause stress. And we get a little bit of rest, hopefully for 8 to 10 hours at night, maybe less. We're always in fight or flight. We are constantly in a space where our body is not happy. And so why does that affect our gut? Because after that 1 hour training session, the body starts pushing blood away from the gut. Okay, for 6 to 8 hours. Any college swimmer I know does not get more than 6 to 8 hours of rest between workouts. It doesn't really happen very often. So we get a lot much less blood flow to the gut, which creates this crazy like extreme event in the gut and changes the gut health. Okay. We're also seeing in athletes again with a lot of that training is they have a lot of what's called zonulin. Zonulin tells the gut lining to open, and that means stuff gets through. And then the body says, attack, 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 create inflammation, create inflammation. So then we see with leaky gut, for example, in swimmers or other athletes that have that high intensity training, is that they're starting to be more fatigued. Their thyroid now becomes an issue. They might be gaining weight. They might have a lot more food sensitivities and issues all of a sudden. So we can definitely do some things about that and making sure that we are treating that gut and making sure we're helping that gut stay healthy in those athletes that are really, really impacting their body. So we can actually test that and figuring out, is there a leaky gut issue? Which foods are causing inflammation in the system? So it's not necessarily the symptoms that's always the issue, because by the time we have symptoms, we've already kind of have a mess going on. It's the presence of those antibodies that our body is saying, attack, attack, attack. And that shows us, just like, let's say, blood pressure. You're not going to have the symptom of high blood pressure necessarily. That's the problem. It's the fact that your level is this high. That's the problem that gives us a risk, right? And we know when there's antibodies being created in the body and because of gut issues, that creates a risk factor for many, many, many problems that go on. So we want to make sure that we figure out what is causing that issue in our body. This is just an example report of what we would test on food allergies, food sensitivity. Is there a lot of permeability in the gut? That means stuff's getting through. Our gut's super unhealthy. And so we can use this in practical ways again on taking that data, helping them understand what we're going to eliminate for now, what we're going to rotate, what we're going to say, hey, no limitations on that. And then we provide them a tip sheet with things that they maybe already love, things that are swaps for things that they already love, and how do we realistically use this data in somebody's situation. And then when we have all of the data, we can put that into a plan for someone. So this is somebody's real plan, high school swimmer, and we can put in where they're eating what they're drinking when's their breakfast, when's their practice. We can put that. I also have a separate sheet that I would give them on breakfast ideas because, for example, this athlete was not going home. They were getting something at a restaurant or a fast food sort of situation. So we had to figure out what we could do there. So this gives them the full plan. If you're thinking, hey, this stuff looks super awesome, we have a great partnership, as Valerie mentioned, with PanAm's, and we have a great discount on our pricing. The only other way anybody can get a discount with our programs is through our team partnership. So if you're a coach and you want extra help with your athletes for monthly nutrition information, for workshops, we do everything virtual. I work with almost zero people in person because everything is virtual. And so we've worked with people all over the world to help their teams with that. If you want extra free content, I love free stuff. Cheap is great and free is even better. So we have lots of great stuff on our website, some free downloads. We have great blogs. If you're in the States, we do a lot of where to eat in this city when you're traveling there. We have a great Instagram that has a lot of information on recovery, nutrition, recipes, all related. We mainly market to swimmers on that, but there is a very applicable to most aquatic sports. And we have a great Amazon shop that also gives you some really good ideas on what kind of things are great in certain categories, like what are sports safe supplements for magnesium? What are great protein powders out there? What are good meat snacks during competitions to eat, right? Just give some good ideas out there for people. You don't have to buy it on Amazon. Find it at your grocery store, fantastic. But it's just a big idea board is kind of what we're after on that. So if any of that sounds super interesting to you, you're like, I want to learn more about that, you can scan this QR code. It'll schedule a call with us. It's not a sales call. It's very casual, and we'll ask you some questions and gather some more info or talk to you about your team and explain more about what we do because this is very brief and short. So if that's of interest to you, you can absolutely do that. But the big in conclusion wrap up is I've seen so many athletes treated for their nutrition needs in a very general, basic way, right? Instead of getting the individualized approach where you are able to test, get data, and put that data into action for each person. Okay. So thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Valerie, for the opportunity, and I'm excited to hear the other two people on here as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Erica. I learn something new every time we chat. It's awesome. You can never stop learning about how to best fuel your body. So thank you so much. And I love how everything is tying together, just, holistic approach to our wellness. And so many things are interconnected as well with some of the things that Dallas mentioned. So thank you for those connections. And I'm absolutely honored to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Joshua Lowe, who began swimming at the age of 8 with dreams of competing at the Division I level. A severe rotator cuff injury in high school threatened those dreams, but after finding a physical therapist specializing in swimmer injuries, he was inspired to pursue physical therapy. Now, as a doctor of physical therapy and orthopedic clinical specialist, he runs a clinic focused on helping aquatic athletes overcome injuries and regain their passion for swimming. Dr. Lowe is dedicated to empowering his patients to move past pain and achieve their goals in the water. And I am personally the biggest fan of Dr. Lowe. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And the screen is all yours.
Thanks, Valerie. Let's get started here. Okay, so I'm just going to be going over shoulder health for the aquatic athlete. And let's see here, one second. Yeah, and so I'm just going to start with a quick story. Like Valerie said, I started swimming at 7 years old, and that's me right there in the middle. I'm 8 years old in that picture. And, one thing that I love about swimming is that it gave me the confidence like nothing else had at that point. And, my parents had put me in soccer, they put me in basketball, and my coach would be the one who puts me as goalie because I was picking like the flowers off the grass, you know. But once I started swimming, like this highly competitive person was created, And, you know, at that young age of 8, I decided that I wanted to swim for college. And what a crazy goal for an 8-year-old to make, more than 10 years away, you know? And so I committed to that goal and I started swimming double practices at 10 years old, which is pretty early, you know? Um, and 6 years into my swimming career as a 14-year-old, a freshman year of high school, that's me on the left with the GOAT, Michael Phelps. We were swimming in the same meet together. Um, I injured my shoulder and I started having this like burning pain that started at the front of my shoulder. And you know, I just tried to push through it like many of us had. I thought it was routine, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And it eventually became so intense that I couldn't swim anymore. And so we reached out to a doctor that we knew. He ultrasounded my shoulder and he was like, "You actually have a partial rotator cuff tear. And so you're going to have to be out of the water for 6 weeks." Um, and that was hard for me, you know, like that was hard for me to hear. And so he said, "Go to physical therapy." And so off swimming for 6 weeks, I was going to physical therapy 2 to 3 times a week. And at the end of the 6 weeks, he was like, "Yep, you should be good to go back in the water." And my pain hadn't changed yet. And that's when I started questioning, you know, like, is this injury like can it actually get fixed? Is this something that like is the end of my swimming career? Like, am I gonna have to put this dream down? Will I be able to actually compete at the collegiate level? And so, as a last resort, we reached out to another physical therapist who was a writer for Swimming World at the time. He was up in Santa Clara, and we drove up there for the day, for the weekend. And after my second session with him, my pain had been 95% better. I was back in the water and he was giving me technique advice so that my shoulder wouldn't hurt after that in the future. And he was a swimmer in college also. And so you know, that experience taught me three things. And the first one was that, like, it's so important to have a provider who really understands you and the demands that you go through as an athlete, as a student athlete, and as a person. And so I felt like he really saw me as a, you know, someone with dreams of swimming in college. And I decided at that point that that was who I wanted to be also for so many other aquatic athletes. Um, and so that is my mission. So I ended up swimming in college at UC San Diego, and I went to become a doctor of physical therapy, decided to do a residency in orthopedics. And then I founded my clinic, Reason Physio, just to help swimmers stay healthy and swim faster. And so these are some objectives that we are going to go through today. I'm just going to go over some quick common problems, go through an anatomy overview. You know, if the shoulder were to tell one story, what would it be? How to help yourself and when to ask for help. And also, you know, this is great for coaches too, to be able to recognize these things in their athletes. So here's some statistics. You know, swimming is a very upper body dominant sport. You think about breaststroke as the least probably, but you know, freestyle butterfly, backstroke is a mainly upper body dominant sport. The shoulders and the arms are pulling most of the body weight. And so competitive swimmers will take about 30,000 strokes per week. Now think about anything that you do 30,000 times any other time. It's really not very much. And so, you know, 97% of college swimmers report shoulder pain, and about 91% of young adolescents also report it. And so this is a big problem that we want to address, which is why we're talking about it today. So common pain points, you know, shoulder pain right here at the front of the shoulder and right at the top. The most common movements that you feel that with is when you're going into flexion, so arms going up overhead, or abduction, which is to the side here, and feeling it right there at the front or the top of the shoulder. And so we're going to go into some muscle pain referral patterns and where you might feel it based off those specific muscles. The first one is the infraspinatus muscle, one of the big rotator cuff important ones. And so basically, the participants, the doctors like put needles into different points in this muscle, and then patients put or participants put dots down where they felt the pain. And so, if you have felt pain in any of these places where there's red dots, like this could be your infraspinatus, those specific places. So this is the infraspinatus trigger point referral pattern. The same one for the supraspinatus, very similar, front and side of the shoulder. And then the last rotator cuff muscle is the subscapularis. So there on the wrist, the back of the shoulder, very common. And so we're just going to do a quick anatomy overview. What is underneath? What is the shoulder? And so we're going to look at the main bone structures of the shoulder girdle, the rib cage, the scapula, and the humerus. And these bones are pretty much floating if it weren't for muscles. And so there are muscles that connect are these three structures together. The shoulder is the joint in the body that has the most range of motion. And so we need a lot of muscles to be able to keep it all together on the body. So these are the 17 muscles that play a role in stabilizing and moving our shoulder. These list serratus anterior, the trapezius, the rhomboids, the lats, all of those are muscles that go from between the rib cage to the scapula or your shoulder blade. And then all of these muscles here on the right, supraspinatus, subscapularis, all of those muscles go from the scapula to the humerus. And, all of these 17 muscles are all for one big reason. And so the shoulder really needs one thing. It tells one story. And if it were to tell that one story, it would say, "Go Dodgers." So the Dodgers just won the World Series this past weekend. And I'm from LA, and so I had to put this in. But Shohei Ohtani is the superstar on the Dodgers. And it actually turns out that he was a swimmer while he was in Japan. So he was a baseball player and a swimmer. And in game 2 or game 3 of the World Series, he dislocated his shoulder sliding onto base. And so this is a great example of what the shoulder really needs, which is the shoulder needs stability. So, Dr. Josh, why is shoulder stability even important? Why are we even talking about this? Obviously, somehow it's related to pain, somehow it's related to performance. And so the little muscles create stability so the big muscles can generate power. So you think about the pecs, you think about the lats, you think about the deltoids. Those are the muscles of the shoulder that really generate power for you as an athlete or for your swimmers as a coach. And so today we are focusing on those little muscles that really stabilize and keep the shoulder together, keep the motion clean so that the big muscles can generate power. So how do we achieve shoulder stability? There's 3 things. It starts out with activation, it goes to strength, and then we want to look at coordination of all of those muscles together. We want the muscles to be able to fire at the right time and not for there to be an imbalance between all of those muscles. Which muscles are the most important for the shoulder, for shoulder stability? And so we're going to go into some of the rotator cuff and some of the scapular muscles to look into which ones are important. So here on the left, we have the trapezius muscle, and more specifically, we want to look at the mid trap and the low trap. And so this is the main group of muscles that are important for us as we look at the stability from the rib cage to the scapula. That's a first base of our stability and of our foundation. And so we want those to be able to fire and be strong enough so that when you have the lats, when you have the pecs, when you have the deltoids, moving, the shoulder is stable. And then we want to look at the rotator cuff. So, you have the supraspinatus, you have infraspinatus, teres minor, and the subscap. and I had a partial tear of the infraspinatus muscle right here. And so we want to be able to have enough strength and enough coordination, enough endurance for those 30,000 strokes that we take per week. And so this is how we're going to do it. Here's one exercise that we have. This is me with a 2.5 pound weight laying down on the side. And this is mostly targeting the infraspinatus and the teres minor. This is just to build strength in the rotator cuff. And so this is the first exercise, side lying external rotation. The second one here is a bent over T. And so this is looking at mid trap and low trap. It's important to have those thumbs up too. This is a great way to build endurance and get those muscles firing here. And so the third one that I have is going to put it all together. It's the mid trap, the low trap, the serratus anterior, and also the rotator cuff works with these. We just heard from Mark Schubert a little bit ago, and they've been doing a lot of band work. And so this is one of those exercises that really gets all of the rotator cuff, the scapular muscles, everything firing all at once if it's done right. So it's a high ROI exercise. It also works on the coordination. So that's the last piece that we want to look at, coordination and control of all of those muscles firing at the right time. So how do we know if you need, or if your swimmers need more help? So if the pain lasts longer than a week, so this is something that, we don't want pain to persist for too long. If swimmers are starting to have pain, they're going to build compensatory motion. So the upper trap is going to take over. The neck muscles are going to take over. And so you hear a lot of things, a lot of times, pain comes up, and then they're like, oh, also my neck hurts, and now my other shoulder hurts, because there's compensation that happens. And so we want to be able to address weaknesses right away. When you've tried exercises on your own, either from Instagram, from your saved folder, on your own with no change, or it gets worse, that's when we know that you're not headed in the right direction, and this is something that we should change, something we should address. These last two are also really important. When your shoulder hurts sitting or at rest, this is something that I felt and something that a lot of my swimmers feel. They're swimming, they're like sitting at school, and you're like, oh, I feel achiness here in the back of my shoulder. It's just throbbing. And that is something that's a perfect indicator that they should go see someone. The last one is the most intense, and that's when it wakes you up in the middle of the night. That's something we really want to address right away. And so let's review. The one thing that the shoulder really needs is stability. We achieve that with activation, with strength, and then coordination. The little muscles create stability so the big muscles can generate power. And the last thing is we want to ask for help early if the pain gets worse or even stays the same. Here are some resources to reach out to me. I have my email and my Instagram. You can reach out at any time. And then my slides also have some references here for studies that I have. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Doctor. I love your approach to this, and so would have loved to know this before two total shoulder reconstructions. So it's incredible too, like science that we are never taught, right? Like as even before you said, if you find yourself sitting and you have pain, and I was thinking that I was like, oh, my shoulder's hurting. So we will talk about that later. So no, thank you so much. I love how everything is connecting, and I want to echo reach out early, right? And I want to encourage our coaches to listen to your athletes. When an athlete actually takes the courage, and this refers back, to Dallas's, like open communication models. Also, listen to your athletes when they're talking to you, right? And have those conversations. Me as an athlete, I did say, I am in pain. I can't move my arm anymore. And it was until I literally couldn't lift my arm. They were like, oh, you need surgery and you need a full new shoulder, right? So Please, 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 coaches in this chat, athletes, parents, everyone, please, this is so important. And especially like I echo Josh's experience, right? Like, why should an athlete's career end early? Because of things that, as you and I have had so many of the conversations about this, it's so simple. Keep your shoulders strong, keep it mobile, right? And it's so many careers can be saved. Even mine, I ended at 17 so unnecessarily. So thank you for that. And I love the perfect segue into Dr. G's presentation, who we are absolutely honored to have here today, especially as you mentioned from a young age, right, Josh, that this is so important to keep in mind. And with Dr. G's also vision for learn to swim to avoid injury and to have perfect stroke from the start to avoid injuries and mistakes later on. So with that, I am absolutely honored to welcome Dr. Genadijus Sokolovas, known as Dr. G, who is a leading sports physiologist with a PhD from the Russian Academy of Physical Education. Formerly the Director of Physiology and Sports Science for USA Swimming, he is now the High Performance Director at USA Pentathlon, developing testing programs for Olympic athletes, including Michael Phelps, Natalie Coughlin, and many more, just to name a few. A pioneer of the swim power test, Dr. G has supported over 100 Olympic champions and 150 medalists across various sports and counting, as we have seen over the past couple of days. So with that, Dr. G, I also want to echo our deep appreciation for your support throughout this conference. So thank you so much for being here with us today, and the screen is all yours.
Thank you so much, and thank you for great presentations, Dr. Josh and Dallas and Erica. I've listened to you in the past a little bit, but really amazed how far we are already with the science and also helping our athletes. And I'm doing research already for almost 40 years, and a lot of stuff that we're developing are directly related to your talks as well. And I hope you will learn more things, what we're doing. Unfortunately, this is very short time, just 15 minutes to present. I'll try to be short as possible. Normally, when we're running clinics, it takes like a week to do presentations or coaching certification courses. So that's why to put in 15 minutes will be just short, few recommendations, and not going too much in depth. But I hope you will learn some things. So let's go straight to my presentation, and that relates also a lot to Dr. Josh, what he just told us as well. Is it possible to develop effective injury-free strength training program for swimmers? And based on our research for, as I told, almost 40 years, so we have a lot of data to support that we can develop strength with injury-free, and that's important. Coming from our knowledge coming from our biomechanical research, as well as strength training research and testing. I remember first time I started to test swimmers of their strength on land, in the water, in different positions, pool, kick, swim. It was back in 1984. Actually, even before that, 82, when I was still undergraduate student. And we already collected a lot of data at that time, and that's all the data supports current knowledge that we have about strength training. So let's move a little bit about our company, our research that we are doing. You can find a lot of research of the data on our website, sport.org. We also developed talent ID and development database that I mentioned to you in my presentation a couple of days ago. Doing swim power test, which records speed and force in real time over the video. As you can see right here, swimmer is swimming, and we know exactly where our problems are in the stroke, and we can target these problems with innovative drills that we developed. And also we're creating equipment that helps athletes to develop strength correctly, such as vertical swim trainers. Or also, Valerie mentioned about science-based learn to swim program. You can teach swimmers to swim correctly without mistakes and without injuries as well, if you're doing correct way. Unfortunately, 99.9% learn to swim programs, they're not teaching this way. They're developing mistakes from the beginning. Then we're facing with these mistakes with elite or sub-elite level swimmers, and we're trying to change those mistakes. So anyway, let's talk about strength training. Unlike exercises on land, swimming in the water doesn't have stable platform like ground. We are not staying on the ground and developing strength. That's why we need to develop strength on land differently as well. We cannot just rely on lifting weights on land, and that will be enough. It's not enough. In fact, it damages some of these performances, and athletes not swimming fast. We have plenty of examples when athletes have been skinny, thin, breaking world records, and they never approached these results through collegiate years. What happened? They became way much stronger, super strong. I'm not going to mention names, but there are several athletes like this. They swam really fast when they just started the college. They didn't improve at all, but they became much stronger. Then I look who is developing strength for them. Unfortunately, people who are working with swimming teams on strength training, they don't have any clue about swimming. Completely in different areas. They're developing land-based strength. Is that correlates with swimming? Is transition from land to the water good? Or we just building strength on land and transition doesn't happen at all? So that's why we need to do some other exercises on land that would help transition of strength to the water. If you look fish, dolphins, all of them swimming from the body, from the center mass, but they're not generating from extremities power, from the arms. That's why no fast creature in the water has arms. We have generate power from the body as well in the water, not from the arms, because generating power from arms leads to injuries. And that's what happened to Josh and probably many, many other swimmers as well, because we're swimming from arms. That's a bad thing. We need to teach kids from Learn to Swim program to swim from the body, not from the arms. And swimmers don't have bulky muscles like weightlifters. Unfortunately, some of them move to that direction once they're in college and start lifting the weights. We need to have longer muscles. We need to have muscles connected to the body muscles that will reduce stress on the shoulders. And if there is no transition of strength from land to the water, there is no reason to build strength. You need to figure out how to transfer the strength in the water, not just build strength on land and then you are super strong, but we are not competing in the strength on land with the muscles. We're competing in the water in transition of the strength. So that's why if you look at these two different persons, obviously these more extremes, bodybuilder and swimmer, you see that muscles are completely different. And sometimes we are moving towards the bodybuilders, I see swimmers, instead of being a swimmer. And that's all tells me that people who sometimes designing the programs, they don't understand swimming. And we need to teach these people how not to injure athletes, and also how to develop good, correct swimming technique. There's some data from our research over here, what correlation is between sprinting speed for 50 meters and strength on land, on dry land, SD. So, and if you look here, so swimmers who are weak, definitely they will benefit from strength. Okay, we put them some strength training and they improve in performances faster. Swimmers who are medium strength, based on our data, it's less than 45 kilograms for the pulling strength on land on the swim bench. So they're already improving less from strength training. And swimmers who are already very strong and we are still building strength, they're not improving at all. It's very small improvements. Correlation is very low. And you see, this is diminishing return from strength training. That's why we need to think about that. Do we need a lot of strength? We need to test athletes. And I don't know any swim team that would test athletes. We did that 40 plus years ago, already tested athletes in strength on land in the water and look transition. But teams are not looking that. And that worries me because we are not going in the right direction quick. And that's also reflects on Team USA performances in that we had in Paris and 1 year ago in Fukuoka. Swimmers very fast in short course, but once it comes to swim to long course, the short course strength training helps to short course, but in long course we need strength endurance. We don't need so much strength, and that's the problem when our elite athletes, not all of them obviously, but some of them cannot transfer the strength from land to the water, and we see amazing results at NC2A, and people are not swimming as fast at the World Championship in long course. It's like almost different sport. but that's a different topic of conversation. So based on our studies, if you're working on strength, it takes about 4 to 6 weeks to transfer strength from land to the water. It doesn't happen right away. You build strength and you're already strong in the water? No, you need specific exercises to do in the water. However, there are some transitional exercises which helps to combine physical or strength improvements with technical elements. And that's what, as I told, this vertical swim trainers that we develop help athletes to transfer this strength from land to the water. And also using swim power test with the velocity curve that helps and force curve that helps us to analyze and understand much better what our individual athletes needs. And we're testing thousands of athletes every year in these parameters. For example, here is coefficient of transition of strength from land to the water. When you're measuring strength on land and then measuring strength in the water, you can see how much % of athletes are utilizing their strength. It's a very simple ratio between swimming and land strength. And it shows percentage what swimmers are using their strength. Elite level sprinters using up to 60% male and up to 55% female sprinters using. And if you are not using this percentage, and I know that many sprinters, they are way stronger on land than they can use in the water. Why are they doing strength on land anymore? They need to focus more on technical improvements and also transition of strength from land to the water. And so that's why this simple task will tell what direction training should go. And we're doing that already, as I told, for decades and analyzing all this stuff. Swim power test also, when we're measuring speed underwater like this for this Olympic champion over 200 butterfly. So she won gold medal about 6 months after we tested her. So we can also design drills and strength training directly in the water, working against resistances, swimming with the weights in the water and other stuff. But we need to understand that what to do with these weights and how they should be placed on the body or in the arms or on the legs, depending what mistakes we're doing. Then we are developing the strength training program in the water as well. And you see this particular swimmer is swimming faster on the side than swimming on the stomach. And there are reasons for that, because on the side, she's kicking in both directions more equally than kicking on the stomach. One of the ways we are working already for many years, developing strength for swimmers, is working on unstable platforms, because from our biomechanical research, we noticed that swimmers are not balancing well in the water. They're swimming from the arms, and that's why Dr. Josh told that, and give example that so many swimmers have injured and shoulders injury. Should not happen shoulders injury if you're swimming correctly, because we need to swim from the body. If body is not tight, body is relaxed, swimmers swimming with the arms. And sometimes we even see when athletes swimming with the arms and crossing the legs, especially distance swimmers. Maybe Valerie also did that. I don't recall when we tested last time. It was a while ago, on a swim power test. But crossing legs happens because body is disconnected completely. Swimmers swimming from the arms. When you're swimming from the arms, you're not using your power. And you are, in fact, you're slower because you're constantly losing balance in the water. And that's what we see on our swim power test as well. And that's why exercises on unstable platforms, and that led me to develop and patent vertical swim training device, helps athletes to develop good body position. And that's what we're doing even with Learn to Swim program, when kids are working on land, developing good body position, and they're not using arms to swim at all. We're teaching kids in Learn to Swim program swimming without arms for a long time until they comfortably can swim 50 meters, even more. They're not using arms at all. Why to use arms if you can generate good power from the body? And that shows also now Leon Marchand, who broke last year or this year at NCAA championship, 500 record just destroyed by almost 50% swimming underwater. Dolphin kicks. That's amazing. We can swim way much faster. This is this underwater kick just evolved so much in the last 5 years or so. And I hope it has something to do with our research as well, when we found many different ways to improve underwater kicking technique. So working on a Bosu ball, another choice. Physio ball, staying even on one leg. If you don't have anything, you have one leg, okay, stay on one leg. You can develop good body position and work on strength training at the same time. Then body and arm muscles will be connected. Otherwise, they're disconnected. And then it's painful for me to see sometimes coming to Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs, where I'm working, to the strength conditioning gym, swimmers are exercising. They're doing completely different exercises than needed. They're lifting, they are doing a lot of work staying firmly on both legs. You're not connecting your arms and body muscles. And that's why I see swimmers become very strong, but they're not using the strength, and they're swimming even slower. They're probably even heavier in the water. They're creating more drag in the water. That's why there are a lot of effective injury-free exercises on land which have to be included in practices. For example, pulling course on Bosu ball or staying on one leg, kicking against TheraBand on Physio ball, swimming on Bosu ball, mimicking swimming motions, body rolls, pulling on vertical swim trainers, and breathing at the same time develops great technique, great breathing technique, which cannot be done in the water. At this learning way better technique on land, working on unstable platforms than doing that work in the water. And that's why we're developing also breathing technique for little kids in Learn to Swim program just on land. You learn how to breathe on land, staying on one leg and breathe freestyle. Then you go in the water and do the same. And that's a great exercise. You don't need even so much water to teach kids to swim. Water time should be limited, because you don't need to start teaching swimming with arms and breathing in the water. Kids are leaning on the arms and they never learn correct breathing technique. The worst exercise I see in the Learn to Swim programs when I'm watching in the pool Learn to Swim programs is kicking kickboard in front. Kids are holding the kickboard with arms and doing one arm stroke and another arm stroke. That's terrible exercise that develops very bad habits, and kids will always lose balance and speed when we're testing them with swim power during the breathing cycle, because they're leaning on the arms. You have to lean on the body, not on the arms, like fish, like dolphins. But we are not teaching that. That's why there is so much potential to swim faster. And once we did mathematical modeling from our biomechanical research and swim power test, and combined the best phases from various swimmers who has the best beginning of the stroke, middle, end of the stroke. I was surprised that already today we know how to swim 3 seconds faster 100 freestyle than world record. 3 seconds. We are so excited to see a few hundredths of a second breaking world record. When I'm looking at that, that's nothing special. Our swimmers 5-10 years from now will be swimming 3 seconds faster, maybe even more. I'm talking just about biomechanical research that we see. So that's why we're swimming very slow, because we don't know how to swim correctly. We're just learning. Swimming is just very fast evolving sport right now. And that's why world records in swimming are improving faster than in most of other sports. So let's look some exercises that we are doing with athletes. For example, pulling stretch cord, staying on Bosu ball. You can do it with both legs or just one leg. What happens here? Body is connected to the arms. There is no chance to be injured in this exercise because you're using your body muscles. Unless you're doing maybe too much, but in general, you're distributing stress from arms to the body, and you are improving way faster as well. When I see at the pool, kids are coming and staying on both legs and doing the same exercise, that's damaging, technique. That's also may increase injuries. That not improves transition from land to the water. This exercise, very simple. You just ask your swimmers to stay on one leg. Doing the same exercise, nothing else. Staying on one leg, stretching quads. Everything becomes connected. Loop of TheraBand around the ankles. It's also great exercise on land. It could be done in the water as well, and we're doing it a lot of in the water, this exercise. When we see when athletes are bending knees too much, so we're improving technique and strength, power very fast as well. And being on the stomach on this exercise is way better than being on the back. Why being on the stomach is better? Because you're improving your up kick as well. We know from our research for many years already that up kick is weakness. Best kickers in the underwater kickers in the world have very strong up kick. I remember when I tested first time Natalie Coughlin, who was the fastest underwater swimmer ever, she was kicking up stronger than down. That's amazing. That led me immediately to the idea, oh, wow, we need to find exercises to develop that. So then next one, streamline position. Obviously, girl is struggling a little bit with streamline position over here, but this is also a good exercise. She's staying on the ball, and holding dumbbell in hands. Now arms are very tight, body is tight as well. Everything becomes connected. If you disconnect it in the water, and our joints are designed to be disconnected because we have big joints, which we can use on land very effectively, like knees, elbows, shoulders. Do we need this? Any creature in the water needs these big joints? Nobody needs. Okay, we need on land big joints. We don't need big joints in the water. The more we're bending our joints, the more it's disconnecting muscles through the joints. Muscles have to be connected. And if you're disconnecting, bending, let's say knee 90 degrees, are you generating good power of the kick? No. You need to just a little bit bend. Muscles have to be connected. Same here, when you're doing this streamline exercise, obviously your muscles are connected if you're staying on one leg, or even better on the boss ball. Freestyle mimicking, staying on one leg on the boss ball and breathing. She's not losing balance. That means she's breathing correctly. Can I see that in the water? Not without without our swim power test. We see when swimmers losing speed, but on land, you don't have to tell even anything to swimmers. Swimmers developing technique correctly. Same with little kids. Little kids learning to swim correctly if they're doing these exercises. How many learn to swim programs doing this? Zero. Zero learn to swim programs. Unless those that we already are in clinics around the world with World Aquatics, with multiple countries as well. And hopefully we can do that with PanAm Aquatics as well in this region also, to run these clinics and teach how to learn swimming technique correctly, not reteach. When you're reteaching, it's much longer process to build new skill and forget other skill or habits. So same swimming, one arm over here in the plank position with one arm and one leg. So this is great exercise, also moving butterfly to teach swimmers with dumbbell, also moving arm, because moving above the water has to be really fast in order to go faster through non-propulsive phase in butterfly and breaststroke. And we'll see big gap of the speed drop in non-propulsive phase if swimmers moving arms very slowly above the surface. That's why we're developing these drills on land and in the water with weights, without weights, and many other positions in order for athletes to develop good skills and change their technique. But again, I'm emphasizing again, we don't need to change if we develop good technique. And unfortunately, we're developing a technique in learn to swim programs, not efficient swimming technique, not for fast swims. We're developing technique just to keep body on the surface, just not to drown, which is okay for general population. But if you want to be a swimmer, you're developing bad habits, and then you need to change your technique to swim fast. That's completely different technique. You don't need to press water down. You need to push water towards the feet to move your body forward. So that's why it's a different technique. And we already have close to 900 different exercises, drills for athletes to fix technique or develop techniques and develop skills that they don't have. Depending on individual mistakes after swim power test, we can see exactly what needs to be done. Same in the breaststroke. This is swimming on land, moving arm and moving forward arm. The weight is good because it helps to move arm forward faster and higher on the surface. That minimizes drag. And biomechanically, that's way better position. And that helps athletes to develop good technique. Roll, a great exercise. I saw some teams are doing that. That's great. I love this exercise. When you're not using arms and not using legs to roll from one side to other side, using center mass. That's what we need to teach again kids and reteach our even elite level swimmers who don't know how to do many different things. They leaning on the arms and swimming slowly. Again, world records are slow. Once we'll teach new generation of kids to swim correctly, they will be swimming so much faster. Nobody will be watching videos of current elite level swimmers because we will have so many more swimmers. So, and the last slide just to show different exercises on vertical swim trainers that we have, even the paddle on the top of the head, which we developed about 12 years ago, most of swim teams around the world already using. And that helps not only connect arms and body muscles, but also it helps to develop a good breathing technique as well. So there are so many different things. You can put any resistance you want on vertical swim trainer and you're building strength this way, but not with lifting weights on land. So anyway, I'm happy to answer questions and let me know if you have any questions or put in the chat and we can answer the questions for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. G. As always, so incredible the way forward that we can all work towards. So I just want to bring the discussion to a wrap and connect all of these things, because what I love about each of you is that you're truly bringing a new perspective to what we've heard for years, right? And it's a perspective that not only is better performance-wise, but it's also better health-wise for our athletes, which is so important. So I want to give each of you the opportunity, if you could share, maybe like a piece of encouragement on, I know these are new things. I know this is maybe for some of us the first time that we're listening to some of this advice or, techniques or different things, but can you give people an advice as to why it's important to adapt these, new practices? And also, what is the one piece of advice that you give that's very practical, something they can start with tomorrow to start implementing, your advice and everything you presented on? I'll give it up to whoever wants to start.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the questions. Did you talk to me? No?
No, everyone, yes, open to everyone, because I feel
okay.
like such different approaches. So it would be really interesting just like to hear from you all, like that piece of encouragement of why they should adopt this and also how they can starting tomorrow, even if it's something simple, but that they can build on.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll start since I still didn't disconnect my microphone. So I think swim coaches should look also how to, especially from today's talk, my today's talk, should look how to change the strength training program, okay? And same in the water as well. The more we can do exercises that would allow swimmers to connect arms and body muscles, the better. We will have less problems from injuries and many other things, as I discussed. So that's why try introduce, and I know all swimmers are doing strength training, try introduce as many exercises staying on one leg as possible. You don't need even fancy equipment for that. Or if you can have possible, that's even better. If you can have vertical swim trainer, that's even better. That's more fancier equipment. And then next thing is same in the water. When you do our biomechanical research, we see that there are a lot of typical mistakes. I didn't discuss at this conference about biomechanics too much, but our equipment allows to measure almost everything. And we can see when athletes are pressing the water down, when they're losing balance during the swimming, when they're not connecting muscles, body muscles and arms in the middle of the stroke, not generating the power. So all these mistakes also can be avoided with different drills. And after testing, we see that swimmers need to swim, for example, with not as much with arms in front. And one of my advice would be forget about kickboards. Just sell your kickboards to your competitors, okay? They can use double kickboards and they will be just slower. And you just keep arms at the sides. and you swim at the sides, or keep small dumbbell in front. And instead of leaning on the arms, you're holding dumbbell like a 2 pounds, which is 1 kilogram, or 3 pounds with larger swimmers, stronger swimmers, which is 1.5 kilogram in front. And you can kick with this dumbbell in front. You don't have dumbbell? Grab big rock from the street and kick with a rock in your hands. It's so simple. There is not too much investment in that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Erica. How about you?
Okay, I'm unmuted. I didn't realize I was. Perfect. Thanks. I was trying to go and do that. So I love how all four of these like talks just connect each other. And I think nutrition definitely plays a part in that, and what Dr. Josh is talking about, and recovering from injury or prevention, and building those tiny little supporting areas in the body, and making sure your stroke technique is great, and holding that dumbbell like amazing. Sell your kickboards to the competitors. I love that. That's great. I always say when you find out your vitamins are toxic to you, give them to a toxic friend is always what I say, or toxic competitor, right? And then your nutrition is so important in your mental health. And if nutrition's just a new concept for you and you guys have never implemented that in your own swimming or your team, start with getting a professional, whether that's us, whether that's somebody in your federation. Maybe you have free resources. Maybe there's a parent on your team that's in the medical field or in the nutrition space, and that you can start incorporating some nutrition conversations, because everybody is human. And if somebody doesn't tell me to do something multiple times a year, I'm going to forget. I just will. So nutrition can't be a one-time, here we're going to learn about it, now do this all year and all season. We all should know everything. 45 minutes and everyone knows everything they need to know about nutrition. Nutrition is something that has to be at the forefront of conversation. Coaches can talk about it, not in a way about body composition, but about, are we fueling our bodies? You're saying you're really tired. Okay, tell us what you ate, right? Are you eating enough? Are you hydrating enough, right? Make that daily conversation. But find a resource, find a professional, find free resources that you can give to your team, send to your team, making sure that that is something that they know that you are committed to as their coach, that their well-being in the nutrition space. And then the final thing is, as a coach, you have to practice what you preach. So if you go to the hospitality room and come out with a Diet Coke and a Dunkin' Donut, right, that's probably not the best example in front of your team. Also make sure that you're showing that good example, that you're fueling your body so you can be there for them as well. That's all I have, Valerie.
Awesome. That's great advice. Love it. Lead by example. And Dallas, how about you?
Yeah, I actually had a bit of the same memo that coaches and sport leaders who are super dedicated and passionate can be the worst at prioritizing their own wellness. And the number one thing you can do is actually model taking recovery time and, working things into your schedule that fill your tank. And I think also we're always asking the athletes to perform better, but not to forget that you're performing. So observing yourself under stress, asking other people, and then just making little adjustments to your automatic responses as a coach or a sport leader. And then you can encourage the athletes to do the same, so that their life isn't just more training, training, training. It's show them that you care about them as a whole human. And basically, I think one to do is anytime you ask, discuss, set goals for the physical, also ask, discuss, set goals for the mental wellness too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Dr. Josh, how about you?
Yeah, I would say find a routine that your swimmers can do right before you get in the water. It can take 3 to 5 minutes to prepare your shoulders to get into the water, get the right muscles firing, and prevent injury. That's the first thing. And the second thing is ask for help early.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really want to thank you all for leading the conversation in all of these spaces that just come together so nicely. So thank you for all that you do, and thank you for sharing your resources with us, which are so valuable. And I encourage you to stick with us. We have one more session to go on athlete development, so I hope to see you all there. And please, please, please join the closing session. We have awesome news that you won't want to miss. So please, please, please join, be there, and that's where we'll give some actionable steps as well as to how can you grab all of this information and take these actionable steps tomorrow. So thank you so much, everyone. Such a pleasure, such an honor to be here with you all, and I'll see you in the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mhm.